Hi, and welcome to the Humanist North Puget Sound monthly meeting. A lot of you know we're a 501c3 nonprofit educational organization promoting humanism and educating on religion. Normally we get together just to talk about religion and secular topics of the day, sometimes a little politics, but today we've got a couple speakers. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the first one, which is Jeff Tadlock of Stairway to Reason.
Yeah. I need to get my computer up there and yours out of there.
Tadlock.
Can we move your computer at all, or?
No,
Okay.
please.
All right, well, I will stand here and hold mine. Let me get out of the way there. So, I am a, you want me over here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I'm an online personality, and this is how people would recognize me when they get online and see me. With Stairway to Reason, I'm a video blogger primarily, and a writer. And I'm here to, Damien's offered this opportunity for me to speak. I'm not typically a public speaker. I'm an artist and a musician by trade, and pretty much my whole online personality is that I was a Christian most of my life, a very devout Christian, and my awakening to reality that none of this was real was so profound to me that I wanted to shout it from the rooftops and share it with people. And so, so basically, almost everything that I've studied, that I know, that I'm authoritative with, is Christianity. Now, Damien is going to speak about origins, and I know really not. Once I get to the Old Testament and early Judaism, I'm no longer in the game. I really can't speak about that. I can tell you everything about Christian theology, Christian history, anything in that area I can speak in a deep level. But since I don't know much about what Damien is going to speak about, and as a supporting opener, one of the things that attracted me to him was he's an axiological atheist. And that really drew me in. I really didn't know what that word was until he had introduced himself to me and explained to me what it was. And here I am in a humanist environment, so I feel right at home with those two words, axiologist and humanist, because I'm both of those. And if anybody was like me and don't know what axiologist, basically, it is goodwill for others. And a lot of times I get from Christians that atheists are people who love to sin, they're criminals, they love to hurt other people, and they reject God so that they can continue this behavior. That is the reason why atheists reject God, is so they can go on sinning, because they love to sin. Now, in my conversion, my awakening, I've never met an atheist in my life that is an atheist for this reason. That is the reason Christians think atheists are what they are. Because atheists want to have radical orgies, they want to hurt people, they want to steal from people. They're bad folks, and that's why they reject God. I have found that to be profoundly incorrect. I've never met an atheist of that nature in my life. Now, sure, every group of people has its bad apples. There's Christians that are bad as well. So. But what I want to share today primarily, and I know that I'm just an opener for Damien, who's going to share the origins of religion. I want to share something that I'm very involved with on my online presence. My creed is eradicating religion and spreading love. So I really gravitated towards Damien's axiologist title, because that also encompasses what I'm trying to do. I feel like humanism and atheism is primarily just not capitalizing enough on what the world needs. The world needs education. The world needs to wake up from religion. Most of us know how dangerous these religions can be. Most of us know that they want to dominate the entire planet and eradicate unique cultures and unique ideas and proselytize it around the whole world, and the entire world becomes Christian or Islam. This is a nightmare to us thinking folks. We know how dangerous these ideas can be, how they clash with one another politically, geography, they clash with one another. They're dangerous, especially the Abrahamic faiths. They're dangerous. And so atheists that want to eradicate religion have good reason to do so for these reasons, but they are also missing a very fundamental part of humanity and what humanity needs the most. What I believe humanity needs the most is goodwill to our neighbors. The same thing that religion preaches. Religion didn't get that wrong. That's an inherent thing that most people can understand, is that goodwill to others. And so I'm here to share with you that we have a problem as humans. Most of you probably now know that one of my favorite physicists is now in trouble for sexual misbehavior. Does anybody know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's right. And so, you know, we do have a problem that transcends any belief, any group. We have a problem with a lack of respect for each other. We have a problem with greed, and we have a problem with erratic behavior and ill intent. This is not a religious problem. This is not an atheist problem. This is a human problem. And so I'm gonna share with you. I think I can set this down. So I have always felt like I'm a person of goodwill and good nature. I can't recall the time I have ever intentionally hurt anybody. And I know that I'm not alone, and I do believe that is that's probably the majority of humans are like me. They do not have this intention to want to harm anybody, or even an animal. It's just not there. We don't have that in us. But there are people that do. And I didn't know this until I was about 10 years old, and I was walking home from I think it was a boy, it's hard to recollect, but I think I was coming home from a Boy Scout event. Walking home, I lived in a small town, going through an alley, heading home, and I saw these older kids, teenagers, and I was a preteen at this time. They had a rope tied around a cat's neck, and they were swinging it around, smashing it. They were smashing this cat onto the ground. I was seeing this on my walk home, and it affected me in a big way. It scared me, it frightened me, it made me feel sick. I felt ill. For the first time in my life, I'd never encountered what I would call evil. And these kids were having fun. I remember it was such a nightmare to me that it stays with me this day, hearing the cat's body hit the ground, and I could hear the breath of the cat leaving it as its rib cage was being smashed against the ground. I get shaken up even recalling the story. That was the first time in my life where I recognized there are evil people in the world. There are people that want and like and enjoy harming others. I can't imagine harming a cat. And then I remember maybe several years later, I had a neighbor who lived in a two-story house. He had kittens, and he'd heard that that kids could survive long falls, and he wanted to throw his cats out the window and hurt them. And he threw a kitten out the window, and I don't recall if the kitten died, but I know that it was injured. Oh, be quicker, okay. So anyways, to make a long story short, I convinced him not to throw any more cats out the window. But what I'm trying to say is that I think that we need to recognize within humanity there are people who are inherently bad. It doesn't matter if you're atheist, it doesn't matter if you're Christian, there are people who are inherently bad, and what's really important for us to address is exposing it when we see it, and spending more time talking about educating people about how to love, how to be good to your neighbors. Don't let that be the church who does that. Humans need to do that. Humanists need to do that. We need the education to teach people about how dangerous religions are, and at the same time, we need to educate ourselves and others, raise our kids. And last thing I will say about this is, when I was a kid and I grew up, when I saw pornography, it was nothing like what I'm seeing today. When I go online, if I see pornography online, most of the time you are going to see violence. You're going to see women being choked. You're going to see women being reenacted in rape scenes. So we need to focus on this. This needs to stop. Anything that promotes violence, anything that promotes ill will towards others, good people have a responsibility to expose it, talk about it, say it's wrong, and get it out of our lives, because it'll spread. People, our brains will absorb this stuff, and it will spread, and it'll multiply. So even without religion, it is still our responsibility to try to help spread love and stop people that want to cause ill will to others. And that is all I say. And for the main act, and so like I said, I couldn't say much on the origins of religion. I know mostly about Christianity, and so I just wanted to touch on something that Damien is highly involved with, and that is axiology. So up now is Damien Murray at AtHope. He is a big online presence, and he's going to share with us the origins of religion.
Thank you. Great job. Wonderful. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
I am happy to be here today. I feel honored, and I thank you all for your time. And that's something that I wanted to say is about the understanding religion's evolution. For me, it was a real important thing, because as soon as I figured out in college, by taking religious classes, that the Bible that I believed in was false, and thus God, that was promoted in that same Bible was then thus also false. And for me, I didn't have an easy time, because I didn't believe atheists either. I had no reason actually to believe anyone, as far as I took it, because to me, I felt like all I had ever been was lied to. Because I was told this Bible was true, and Jesus was real, and God was real, and angels and demons and all kinds of magical nonsense was real. In fact, my family was actually in a cult called the Local Church in Southern California with Witness Lee, and they actually connect to Watchman Nee from China. Regardless, anyways, they were a lot like Jehovah's Witness, very strict. We had like no influence. I didn't watch really TV or anything until almost 13 years old, when I left and lived with my mom, who was an evangelical Pentecostal, a different kind of crazy to me. And as a kid, I thought both versions were crazy. The cult was insane, and then this thing wasn't much better, but at least they didn't seem to be as harmful. But I really didn't believe it. So also, like I said, once I realized that the conclusion of God was false, I didn't all of a sudden believe all atheists. And so this really is about a culmination of my personal journey. I wasn't an archaeologist. I actually have a degree in psychology. My emphasis was on drug addiction and intervention, which actually is good talking to theists using intervention. But the thing was that once I realized that there was some falsehood, I didn't just automatically believe the opposite. How do I know atheists are right? Just because religion is wrong, it didn't magically mean that everything against religion was automatically correct. So this is really the culmination of, that journey for me. And so, go ahead.
Are you using, when you use the term atheism, are you talking anti-theism?
Well, okay, I am an anti-theist and an anti-religionist. Right. But yes, I don't consider all those the same thing.
Okay.
Atheism to me is simply the rejection of the belief in God.
Okay.
That I simply have no belief.
All right, and so I guess that since that can't have a right or wrong test, you can't be wrong in disbelief for lack of evidence.
Well, you can be wrong in the lack of evidence that you choose to present. I mean, I could say there's no evidence yet that crop circles are not UFOs. But certainly that's not, to me, a reasonable thing. So I want to have as many true and the most higher reason. In other words, like, some things can have some validity, but we want the ones that have the most validity. And to me, at least that's my goal. I always think of it in two kinds of philosophy. Justificationism, and only the limited sense of that, not like any higher, you know, because some people take that into a full philosophy. To me, it just basically means anything that you offer has to be justified, or I don't even entertain it, because you haven't offered me any reason to entertain it. So that's kind of like what I try to do in my presentations. I've actually read probably 10,000, you know, archaeological documents. Some of them I had to translate from German, from Japanese, you know, or all kinds of different languages. And because really I wanted to learn. And I decided to write a book because of the stuff that I did. But my first stuff was actually just clarifying what's true, who's right. I wanted to know. Because they said, well, religion is false, and I kind of thought maybe that's true, but what do we know? So I don't want to go into too much into about that. So let me go on and start with, to me, the beginning really of pre-religion in a sense. This right here is Homo erectus, and about 300,000 years old at least, is what I would say is the origin of the beginning of pre-Animism. And if you see right here where I have the little, is it showing up on there? Should have a pointer. Is it not working? Anyways, I'll just point myself. So those little faces on the rock of the Homo erectus, that I drew this, by the way, it's my art. But the faces, those are actually almost direct copies from actual stones that are about 300 to 500,000 years old. And they were collected by Homo erectus, and they have anthropomorphic faces. Now, the very interesting thing, even like this right here, is just my representation. By the way, these rocks are like little tiny, like more like pebbles, not like, I mean, I know he's sitting on a rock, but that rock was actually about that big. So, but it's just creative license. So, but just put these things, and like this one, you know, is about like, you know, this size. But so, anyways, the fact that they started to do a certain kind of face, it's not just any face. One eye open, one eye closed. Several of them. It is not in this one and that one over there, but it's in that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. There's several of them that are like that. Some I didn't draw because they were hard to see, but there's even some where they took little tiny pebbles and wedged them into the like teeth. Now, so they're trying to do something. It's certainly at least pre-art, but I think that the art is also expressing some symbolism, especially when you have a diverse array of the use and multiple, you know, reproduction of a similar idea. Now, a lot of people thought that the Homo erectus couldn't speak. Wrong. They can have some speech. And this is real important because a lot of anthropologists believe you can't really have a religion transfer in any kind of a real way unless you have speech. I personally disagree with that. Do you realize that most of humans' language in general is not just transmitted by words, but by tone, by expression, how fast they're done, also by what emotion is put into words. Words are not just packets of ideas, they're also packets that transfer feelings. When I talk about something, you relate it more in a personal way. Well, these ancient peoples, in a sense, their mind wasn't exactly like ours. Ours is about 50,000 years old and down, is, in a sense, modern, you know, human thinking. But they still, you know, were not, you know, no intelligence, and they definitely had creative things. So this right here is a Tantam figure. It was found in North Africa, and it is about 500,000 years old. And it's anthropomorphic, it's kind of human figure. Someone call it a Venus or a goddess. I think that's...
Wollendorf?
No, that's not. That's in Germany.
Okay.
No, this is in North Africa. It's called a Tantam figure. Anyways, there's also one called the Alluvian goddess, which is similar age, but it's anywhere from 250 to anywhere to almost 800,000, because they're not sure about how it was in the dirt. So anyways, I'll move right along. So I want to get to Animism. So Animism has been 100,000 years old, at least. And it's basically a simple template that, to me, is then kind of like added to in all religions. In a sense, to me, everyone who has a spiritual or not religious or just any sort of magical thinking is probably some version of animism. Animism to me also is seen in all the other religions. It's like Legos. It's like just adding more things. So like say Judaism. Judaism is a compilation of animism, totemism, shamanism, paganism, progressed organized religion. That Judaism. So in a sense, how I see it, it's not, when people talk about like the origins of the religion, I see all the stuff that's packed in it. All the totemistic ideas, all the shamanistic, woo-woo and hitting drums and sound and singing. And this also is big into singing and stuff as dancing as an expression of the religion. The difference really, I think, in animism is that some of the other religions, animists sometimes believe that being possessed with a demon is a good thing. Which I think is interesting. But then again, they have a more communion in a sense, their belief with spirits in general. They don't generally have a God. Like I show up here in the sky, this is kind of like their afterlife to me. They don't see a difference between human and animal. Everybody goes to an afterlife in a sense. Everyone has an essence, a spirit, and they're animated in some way. So in general though, animists believe as a spirit-filled life or afterlife. That's my basic little simple definition of it. And so if you think this way though, in a sense you are an animist to some amount. Now you can even be an atheist and be an animist. So understand that we also have then the next one, which is totemism. And totemism is a little bit different to me. So if you notice, even in the sky, they have the same sort of as the animist, thinking that in a sense, animals in a sense could go die, go to heaven or whatever, some sort of a place afterlife, or become spirits at least if they dwell on the earth itself to them. So it doesn't mean like the afterlife to them may not be like somewhere out there. It may just be everyone all of a sudden becomes spirits in the environment, or part of the natural, like almost like pantheism environment. But anyway, so this right here though, these pantheistic more on the other one, where it was a little more like kind and nurturing nature. Now nature becomes a little more aggressive. That's why you go from, to me, the other one in a sense is like a dove or is a stork or something about life. And this is generally about death in a sense. It's the vulture. And the snake I have in the first one for the animists are sort of a neutral, but in totemists I see it as a little more of a negative thing, that how they view nature. Nature is something that they can dominate and utilize, but it is something that is dangerous. Where to me, animists have a little more of a holistic kind of hippie nature. In fact, I even watched a video on animists where they were with an anthropologist and they went out to take meat from a lion without weapons, without harming the lion. Most bizarre thing I've ever seen, but it reminded me, we need to, when we think about ancient religion, we need to not look here and that way. We need to try to put our minds there and look out. And so to me, like when I hear people say, as atheists, I hear sometimes, Damien, I'm sure that the origins of religions is fear. And I go, I agree. They go, well, it's fear of lightning. And I go, I don't agree. I absolutely don't agree. Animists do not fear lightning. You can forget that right now. Animists didn't fear the lion. You have to put yourself in their mindset. They see themselves as a spirit, all equal, part of nature, plants, animals, everything. So to me, when they look at religion, they're approaching it a different way. Same thing with the totemism, except totemism is about structure. Everything is in classes, in clans. That clan is not us, not this. They're way more, in a sense, encapsulated in how they do things. So once again, that doesn't mean that because these are primitive religions, that doesn't mean that I think they're any different than other religions. Go ahead.
Woven into any early animism or totemism, do you see there being a motif of like the earth goddess, the mother goddess?
Well, definitely. Well, totemism definitely. I wouldn't call it goddess. Once again, I think that to me also, even if you said earth goddess to a totemist, totemists don't think of God as we think of as total anthropomorphic. In other words, anthropomorphic is like human-centered, human-natured, or human behaving. To me, totemists and animists would be more like nature behaving, more than. So we're right about Earth, but I don't like when people say goddess because to me, I feel like they pack too much into what that may be.
Okay.
So here, totemists, yeah, they may believe in women's like embodiment of fertility, But just like I try to tell people, they could have been, let's say, totally into women. Every picture could have been female. But that doesn't mean you need to look at that and think that means women are equal. Just think this. Did we not have a black president? Did that mean that America was equal? No. Just because somebody gets power or is put in a position or even they're venerated doesn't mean there's an automatic, thing where they're treated equal. Now, I will agree to me that even shamanism, totemism, and animism, all three of those, are in a sense a little more female-centric, to answer your question.
Well, even by this time, there's a lot of dolmen architecture appearing.
Well, no, dolmens don't happen at 50,000. Nope. Dolmens are a European basic thing. This totemism to me starts in a sense in Africa. 70,000 years ago, there's a stone snake in southern Africa. So it's the first human worship. And I think that was the impetus that then moved north. And these people were connected because you also have burials in Israel. But then you have burials further up. So the thing is, though, dolmens are basically tombs. So they're tomb graves, or they could be, some of them actually were almost like astrological things, because if anyone doesn't know what a dolmen is, they're basically grave structures with stone slabs and stuff. Sometimes they're just two stone slabs with something on top. Sometimes they're whole mounds. Also, a lot of times when we see them like dolmens today, we only see the structure. But that's not how it actually looked. Most of the structures would have been covered with dirt. They'd have been like mounds, which is just like the kurgans and the pit graves that happened from about 7,000 to about 4,000. But so you're talking about is about, I think, 4,000 to, I think, 2,000 dolmens. Because dolmens are not even as old as cattle hawk, or, I'm just telling you, I already know, I'm way big in the archaeology.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so I'm going to go back to this. So, but this is way before that. So this is the structure. So I'm trying to say, so to me, this right up here, I put this as like the thing that becomes God. It's the little architecture. So what do I mean by this? So the first people, in a sense, so everybody the same, these people started saying a structure. I think the first people had like ancestor spirits. Even maybe possibly like the rocks could have been also, for the Homo erectus could have been ancestor spirits of some kind of thinking. But so ancestor spirits, I think, is what gives birth to the idea. Then this right here is like a clan ancestor. But see, since they're not a blood ancestor, they're in base and almost like an archetype ancestor. And to me, it's not that hard to move that archetype ancestor to just God. And I think that's a lot of times what happened is, and even like, Odin was actually originally a shaman himself. A human shaman turned into the god Odin, who then makes all the pantheon in a sense for the, Nordic peoples. It starts in a sense in shamanism. And shamanism gets some of the elements from totemism. But shamanism, which I'm going to go to the next, shamanism basically is the vergence of, or I would say the re-emergence of women. Because I see it as animistic, it's kind of feministic kind of a thinking, certainly. And then totemism I see is almost like a male reaction to that. Wait a minute, we need to get this and only do this and control everything, and nature's dangerous, but we need to utilize. So then this is also a throwback to, wait, let's not be so controlled. Let's not be so, into clans. Let's be a lot more back towards nature. That's why I see shamanism as like a throwback to that. But these people, to me, that started shamanism were hunter-gatherers. And they were hunter-gatherers that are going about 6,000 miles, trekking all the way across, following basically reindeer. You know that thing that's Santa up there in the North Pole? Yeah, it was always funny because they would say it's Germanic myths. Okay, and do you know where Germans came from? Because I'll tell you, it's Siberia. And guess what was in Siberia? Shamans. So it also tells you why the shamans like to have the red and white coat. I don't know, it kind of reminds me of Santa Claus, if you were to make it more extreme. So anyways, the other interesting thing is they actually gave out magic mushrooms, little red and white mushrooms, as gifts during Christmas, or solstice, I should say. Anyways, so they were already involved, though. As you see, they take the thing and they make it even better. Not as small as before. Now the metaphorical ancestor is a lot bigger in how they view it. It's a lot closer to me to God, to what will become God, and gods or goddesses, whatever. So then the animals go back to being a little bit less threatening. And even the snake still could threaten you, but it's not inherently threatening. Though to me, spirits are different now, because human spirits take a less large role, whatever, in their belief structure, and all of a sudden other spirits, like other types of supernatural ages to them. And the problem with some of the shamanism, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes to me if it's like metaphorical God, or it's they believe in some kind of a pantheism or deism or who knows what. It's like very not structured. But then again, it is 30,000 years old to me. So the oldest one of these, very interesting. Shamanism, basically, just think of it as also a spirit-filled, belief in life and afterlife, just like animism. It can be attached, expressed to things like objects, like totemism, and it also, though, has a real shift, like I said, about women. So, but then we get to the shift of women that shamanism had, to me, is that animism basically says kind of everyone's equal, but women is valued. Where I see shamanism is basically saying women are shamans. So to them, it would be women are the priests, which would mean that women are a class, almost like the Jews talk about, a priestly class. So in a general sense, shamanism, in fact, even I think it's in North Korea, the oldest use of the word shaman only meant female. They had to make a new word. They made it for females, and they took the old name that only meant women. They took it just for men. I think it was like 1,200 they did that years ago. But anyways, you could see that everything started, like you said, not goddesses. That's a little too much of the pagan goddess worship, I think, that tries to adapt that too much. There is some stuff, but you need to be really careful. It's not, to me, really until 12,000, I don't think there was this thing called a god, to me. Gods, to me, are a birth of asceticism. They were stuck in one place. That's once the resources become limited, we desire to have help, and then we get magical thinking, and that's why you look at all the original goddesses are attached to grains, every one of them. So that tells you, and I think that agriculture and asceticism, basically almost at the same time, about 12 to 14,000 years ago, they kind of both come into a commiseration of two behaviors. The one that we stopped moving around. Some of us, of course, there's still shamans up there in the north, just for a long time. But anyways, so at 12,000, what happened to me is, some of these shamans, to me, from Siberia or Inner Mongolia area, they go into northern Iran, to me. Then at about 14,000, 16,000, then they build a little bit of stuff, then they go into southern Turkey. Once they go into southern Turkey, they build a lot of stuff. You get the world's first temple at 12,000 years ago, go back to Tepe. And then you get 9,000 years ago, a little bit more central Turkey. And that is Catalhawk. And Catalhawk is basically about 9,000, 10,000 years old. Very goddess. In fact, I would say that was one of the beliefs, was goddess religion. So at that point though, but this is 12,000. But actually in Catalhawk it would be 10 to 9,000. And there actually is a figure of a female at that point sitting on a throne. And she's got two leopards, which becomes a very common theme, especially in Crete, in Minoan religion, and then it was adapted by the Greeks, all from Turkey. In fact, even genetically, 9,100 years ago, people from southern Turkey, west Turkey, went over to the Minoans, or became the Minoans, went over to Crete, or became the Minoans. And then, so then the religions they took from, which I call it, at Catalhawk, I would call it the goddess and the bull, basically religion. Anything, and it's all JDNA, just so you know if you want to look. And JDNA is all the way towards Italy, Spain, all that's JDNA. All that, like this, and then it went up into Europe. All JDNA, all coming out of agriculture, starting at 12,000, spreading at least by 9,000, and certainly by 7, all up in England, all over the place, Germany, everywhere. So, but to me, originally, these people were shamans. So they were shamans, but they're shamans that decided to stop being, instead of traveling and just being fixed in the place. once they became fixed in place, that's when their shamanism changed. You have the emergence of the skull cult, which they talk about, which to me, they talk about it, that basically being somewhere around 7 to 9, you know, down to like, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. But to me, actually, no, there's evidence of it 12,000 years ago. Because there's evidence at the oldest human temple in the world, which is in southern Turkey, Göbekli Tepe. So because there's already a skull cult, and they say that later that becomes, in a sense, the beginning sort of a paganism, they think it's at 7 or 9. No, it's up here. In fact, what's really interesting, there's pillars in the Göbekli Tepe, and they always wonder like what it is. Now I think they say it too. They think that they hung skulls. Well, what I think is those were sky burials. You still see those in shamanistic cults today, especially even like the Tibetans. The Tibetan religion basically is the Bon religion, and the Bon religion, the Bu. One of them, there's Bu and Bon. One is Siberian shamanism. One is shamanism from Tibet. So I'm trying to think about which one, but I think it's anyways, I know so much I get confused sometimes. But anyway, so the fact is that these people in a sense are the same. So like you look in Tibet, what they do even to this day is they have sky burials where they basically put bodies in the ground and let the birds eat them. So the reason why you take that, and then I think a lot of stuff is connected to religion. Even like in the Japanese religion, the torii gates, there are gates, and guess what goes on top of the gates? Birds. You know what I think that is? Just part of the pre-existing belief in sky burials that actually goes back to the beginning of paganism, where they put these big pillars and they made them look like a man and a woman, and they put bodies on the top so the birds can eat them as a sky burial. And you know that this is not that far from true, because in Catalhoch, now there's no evidence, like specifically no drawings saying they did this. More than likely they found skulls. There's a bunch of evidence that they had holes in like their nose that are some way being held up there, whatever, like holes in them. Anyway, so the fact is though, they also have to look at that these people were not isolated. These were not isolated ideas. So these ideas that came from, like I said, up here, went down here into here. What's very interesting is they then go down here. They become Sumerians, they become Egyptians. Egyptians definitely have blood that goes back to Turkey, you have blood that goes back to Siberia, which is very interesting to them, not me, because I know where they came from in a sense. So people are like, well, how do they have that? Well, let me tell you a story about religion. So when you see that these people, now at 7,000 years, basically all the people of Siberia invaded, and male DNA just went woof into Europe until 5,000. Just dominated all Germany, all those areas. It came from Siberia, and it probably a male-dominant wave. You know this because the spread of the DNA is not equal, not like female DNA and male DNA. You just have this max. So they basically hit and took over. And to me, that happened. So paganism happens at 12, and I think it spreads out, and I think shamanism keeps hitting it. From the north, keeps coming down and attacking, and then later, those same type of people become the Vikings, but much later, thousands of years later. But
so, what are the key distinctions between that you're saying between shamanism and paganism?
So to me, a shamanist basically believes that the world has spirits that they can, or demons, or some type of thing that they can interact with and intercede with. Like say if you got sick, to me as a shaman, that possibly is a demon, or possibly is a sickness that my companion demon or angel or whatever guardian spirit, whatever you want to call it, because these are just words, they may have a different conception a little bit, but to relate to what we think of, they would then send or ask that one to go into you and take it out, or whatever. Or I could do it opposite. You could be my enemy, and as a shaman, I could, in a sense, almost pray that you're demon possessed to be, your mind changed or controlled, or that somehow some other thing will influence your ancestors, or then somehow intercede to you. Or I'm not saying I understand totally how they. I'm not claiming to be a shaman. I'm just saying that some of that I read, that seems to be how they. So I don't want to make it off that I know something I don't, because I'm not that. Like I can be a shaman, but I do understand some of their thinking. Especially, like I said, because I understand psychology, this stuff relates to me in a way that's not so like just the artifacts. I see artifacts and I gotta go, oh, I know why you would make that. It's really interesting, like they had this thing that was used, you know, here if you see the alcohol. Alcohol was found at the first temple. So to me, 12,000 years ago, at least we're already making some sort of beer, brew, mash, something. It's fermenting. At least they, for sure we know they fermented grain in big troughs about the size of these tables. Now, did they make and drink the alcohol out of that? Probably, but I think maybe they were just probably, because it looks like a feast for a lot of people. So they may have just been making almost like oatmeal, sort of a grain mash or something. And then probably, after a couple days maybe, or whatever, it starts to ferment or whatever. So depending how they do stuff. And then they end up with alcohol. But at some point, they actually start making alcohol on purpose, for sure. But I'm just saying, we know there's evidence that there was fermenting grains in big troughs made of stone that had to be for communal something. So I think that alcohol really has a big deal to do with, because once again, grains. Almost all goddesses are grain goddesses, or have it linked to grains. This is very important to understand, because then also you understand, to me, women were seen as being in control of this type of, in a sense, magic. So for a long time, you have women basically being the witches, but to me, a lot of times that probably was just a beer brewer and a few other, like, you know, herbs and whatever.
Well, and these wasn't this part of the shaman community achieving altered states?
Oh, well, definitely, that's what
whether it was through music or rhythmic things, or drumming, or inebriates or whatever.
That's correct.
And that's why you have the cultures that use them ceremonially, don't have an addiction issue with them, and then you introduce this addictive substance into a genetic pool that hasn't developed that resistance to it. And
well, I don't think it's just even a genetic resistance. I think it's a mindset. It's about values. It's just like if you give monkeys a chance to do drugs, but you have no other thing to play with, they will get addicted. They will do tons of drugs. But if you put that same, like cocaine, if you put cocaine, but you put a lot of stimulus, I know I read an article about this, a lot of stimulus for the animal, where they have all kinds of things to play with or another play, they almost don't even do the cocaine. So it really is about, I think, that how we approach things. If we, like we're in here today, we're being, or I want to be a good person. I want to spread knowledge. I want to enlighten others. I want to inspire others to want to inspire themselves and inspire others. These are good values to me. These are values that are not by accident. Well, to me, either is, in a sense, religion. I hate when people feel like it's, like I hear it being said it's a meme or some kind of, it survived because it was like some sort of a good thing. No, it's a human product. It's no more than they building rocks and stones in that cauldron, you know. It's just a product. And it's just a compiled idea, this little idea. So it starts, like I said, pre-Animism, they were just collecting rocks. They thought maybe that, you know, looked like they're dead. It reminded them like, I see it like a gravestone almost. Like little, this is, Bill died or whatever. Here's Bill. Remember Bill? Whew. Remember Bill. Care about Bill, whatever I'm saying. So I see it as, to me, that's how, I'm not saying 100% no, but to me that's it. And then so then it goes a little more, then they start burying people because we like Bill, right? We like, let's give Bill a thing. So then we put little things around Bill. Oh, well, Bill would eat some food. We had beer, oh, little beaker culture. Putting little things of, like the beer and grains, they need this, and you know, you can tell, that's about, I think, 8,000. I think beaker culture, maybe 7, 6, anyways. But it has to do with, the beaker culture has to do with alcohol and spread over Southern Europe, or actually Central Europe. But so, this right here, you have to understand, these right here are the beginning, in a sense, of the Indo-Europeans. And to me, why that's important is because a lot of the languages of the world that we have today are, in a sense, Indo-European. And that includes people that speak Hindi and in India, to Afghanistan, to all the way to Spain. They're just all over Russia. All Indo-European religions. I mean languages. So the languages all seem to have this similar sort of religion, the paganism religions. And they have a lot of similar things that go together. And to me, they all still tie back to the agriculture. To me, but once the agriculture takes in, right, and they get this idea of gods attached to things, is when I think that it moves into a deeper state where they realize, or they started to, take gods and make them attached to places. Used to be gods were in a sense like an idea, some sort of metaphorical, abstraction that then turned more and more and more concrete, or more, in a sense, real world. Probably I would suppose because we started demanding more evidence, like, yeah, that sounds like, not, I don't know, but I'm just saying I could see where someone could transfer to get a stronger thing, because they're like, yeah, they ask more questions, you're starting to get people thinking, a lot more language happens, it's probably about 6,000, maybe even 8,000 over at Elam, which is in southern, western Iran, and then probably from there, Sumerians, hard to tell, because in a sense also, these might have been the Sumerians and the Elamites might have been the same people from Turkey, in a sense, almost the Kurds, and they went down like separate ways. So these people in the mountains here of Elam, in a sense, these people that probably made some of the first language, these people also, first language. The problem about the Sumerians is some of their words are loan words. Loan words are like words that you didn't make up, you took from another culture. The culture they took from is Turkey, southeast Turkey. So to me, and there's two hypotheses, the Kurgan hypothesis, and there's also an Anthropological hypothesis of the Indo-European or Proto-Indo-European languages, and thus the spread of the Proto- or Indo-European religions. And so the one hypothesis, which I think is the most likely, is that it came out of Turkey about 9,000 years ago, all Indo-European languages, and then spread out from there. I think that the other one is that it happened just north of Turkey, like over there in the, I think it's the Urals or mountains or whatever it is, I can't remember exactly, but anyways, it's just right there. Here's Turkey, just like right over the, I think it's the Black Sea, something like that. Anyway, so I had to learn a lot of archaeology and a lot of geography. Man, I remember when I first started, I knew almost nothing. So it's actually 10 years. The reason I know so much is just because I want to know. I keep mind like a little baby. Why? Why? I want to know, and I want to understand, because I want to know how I should think about things. Because I'm a rationalist and I really want to understand and think correctly. I want as many true things. So I went on a journey. I don't like religions. I actually wish they all would be turned into mythology or ruined. But I've gotten $100 books on religions because I care so much about understanding. So to me, you really have to understand that what we think of religions today, I consider to be part of this thing right here about 5,000 years ago. It's basically what I consider progressed organized religions. So religions are already there. All the ones we think of now today are progressed into a new phase. In other words, they're like paganism plus or something. So, but they're in a sense to me just forms of paganism, all of them. So they just call themselves something different, that's all, to me. So monotheism is not to me anything different than paganism. It's just a paganism with one deity, that's all. Okay, so you're a paganism with one deity. All right, cool. But anyway, so but the one thing with I think paganism, one thing that for me at least, is different than these is paganism generally is more naturalistic, just like all its forebears in a sense, where animism is really hippie-ish naturalistic. Totemism a little bit less, shamanism on throwback, and then paganism still, and then even less. In a sense, to me, they become more refined, structured. They have laws. What's really interesting is everything before this point was almost centric on female. I mean, there is not, that I know of, there is no, before 5,000, there's not one male shaman that's ever been found that I know of. But there's 30,000 years old, at least. There's one in Siberia, 14,000 years old, one in Israel, 9,000 years old, one in Germany, and I think Czechoslovakia or something down there. I always forget exactly what those countries, but anyways, somewhere over there, west of Turkey. So anyways, in Europe. So the thing is though, you see that there's all these things. This is why to me the male god, now that I know religion, is laughable. If the male god was a true thing, what was he waiting for? like all of human history to happen, and they go, hey guys, didn't know that you wanted to know what the truth is, but here I am. So to me, the thing is that it all needs to be understood that the male god is a new idea. And to me, the new idea came to me really has to do with, I think, Egypt. And the mentality also, some of the mentalities in Mesopotamia. So Egypt is to me the first one at 5,100 or something like that to start having male figurines buried with the deceased. Because before that, it's naked female figures only. So, and then one of the oldest goddesses that supposedly for the Egypt religion that is supposed to be the sky and everything like the original almost of everything is a naked female. And I think that it might be the same one because this one also has the naked female, which most of the Egyptian ones are clothed. So the naked one is actually the naked one is actually also not just about the stars in heaven itself, but after the afterlife. It's the one that takes people from, in a sense, the land to the afterlife, which would remind me of the stuff they put in the graves. So, anyways, so at a certain point, though, the graves became male. You can tell because they gave them little beards. And, but then, so what happens, though, when they do that, they then make a law, in a sense, that you have to pass the kingship or the rulership only through the male line. That really had not been, in a sense, that I know of, a really structured thing. And even at 4,000 years ago, is the oldest women's right document in the world, coming from Southeast Turkey, and it was a basic treaty with Southeast Turkey and Lower Mesopotamia, or some part of that. And to me, that just shows already that before that must have been, in a sense, a given, I guess, because why would you, in a sense, now need to put a law? So, or maybe that was that now that it was a problem, they needed to make an issue. So I know it was a treaty, so you have to not to put too much into it, because they also said, don't, take our slaves and, our other goods or whatever. So it may not have been 100% pro-women, but it certainly is interesting that they're already saying, though, that women matter, something that it took a long time to get back to. Once in a sense, that religion made this hard charge at this time towards, in a sense, I think is female. I see, to me, if you look at monotheism, you won't find a female god. I find that to be very interesting and also very telling. So I see as paganism's response is monotheism. But the response, I don't think, is multiple gods. I think it's a response against the female. And to me, I think that one of the things they might have had to have done that to their mindset, because before that, it was female. So how do you change the mindset from women are equal to women are not? You obviously either do it by absolute power, or you have to do it slow erosion. So I think that in a sense it was a slow erosion, because women in a sense had power almost until 2,000 years ago. And after that point, there's a large drop off. And it's almost like it just goes to non-existent for a long time. I'm not just saying it had to do with Christianity. I'm talking about the fall of the Minoans. And you have a whole bunch of cultures that before... Did you have a question?
Well, no, I was just saying, for a long time, we still haven't.
Well, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm an anarchist feminist, so I'm definitely for women. All I'm trying to say is that compared to, like now, let's say that women are starting to get the right to vote or whatever, the right to do things in society. I don't think it's 100% definitely, but I'm just saying, compared to 2,000 years ago, it's funny. At a certain point, 4,000 years ago, 4,000 something, 548, I don't know, something. I can't remember. But anyways, that's like the first female like queen or empress of a country, 4,000 something years ago. So I'm just saying that that's what I meant. It's like women, all religions, like women, 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 and then no women. And then no women rights at all for a long time. So to me, there's a real drop. So it's hard when you look at, that's what I'm saying, when you look at religion, if you look at the whole, and I like to talk globally about how I don't like religion, but I always try to remind people, though, please remember, though, it is a lot different than the different types of religions. But also as an, go ahead, your question?
Well, I don't want to cut off a point we're trying to finish.
Oh, what I was going to say is, I forgot now, but go ahead, so go ahead.
Well, kind of ties back to something I was asking earlier, yeah, and I misread your one slide. You had 50,000 years, and I read it as 5,000. Where
Oh,
in
okay.
both the dolmen, because I mean.
Oh yeah, dolmens
to
at
me-
5,000 definitely.
Yeah,
is.
and I guess one of the things that's suggested by looking at them is that they're kind of have vaginal symbolism, and that burial might at least symbolically have been the idea of returning the body back to a anthropomorphized mother ideal that's in.
No, I
embedded in the
agree. You did, anything after 12,000 definitely has goddess.
And so I guess it's partially it seems like evolutions in religion have to be tied back to the ideas and the psychology and the symbolism. And I mean, at least with the Abrahamic monotheistic religions, what you have is you have God completely pulled away and removed from the earth.
True.
Finally, and then you have this masculine male divinity that doesn't even have a female counterpart, and so the
No, well, actually, at first he did. No, at first, all Jewish religion had.
Okay.
Just so you know, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that.
But-
Don't assume. First, real quick, I'm sorry. I just want to make a point. Don't assume that the Bible actually is accurate to the religion of those people. Please, the people that wrote the Bible were like people like in the ivory towers. People on the ground, they still worship goddess. I think. Can't remember when, but if you look in the Bible, there's verses that say that there was a Asher pole in the temple. Asher was the goddess that God, or Yahweh had married. So, of course, she would be there as his wife, which is the nature tree. The tree, of course, that a snake is related to. By the way, snakes and women are connected because of the umbilical cord. They thought that snakes, an umbilical cord was in the sense of snake going from the mother, the goddess, to the child, giving life.
And snakes renew themselves through
Skins,
shedding,
right, that's
and
right.
so in Hindu imagery, they're not. That's an image of eternity, and like the.
Oh
like
yeah,
the
it wasn't.
Confucius.
That's what I was saying. If
And,
people always think of it as death, I'm
yeah.
saying that I think the original was life, not death.
Well, and that's a Judeo-Christian kind of.
Oh well, yeah. We go
recasting of the serpent. Yeah, and I
Yes.
guess I'm talking about where I know that there's polytheism integrated into the Bible, and I'm not saying it's a pure
and henotheism.
version of any of this, but where it gets to is eventually a deity who's completely masculine, completely male, and somehow operates on a principle that's divorced from procreation and sexuality. And
True.
I guess it's that pulling away that seems significant.
It is
Too.
significant. I do, and I think that's what I'm saying. I think it goes together. Sexism and this time in history, to me, statism. It's all linked. As soon as the state came, the state got to say who was who.
Yeah.
Once they did that, they made laws and said, guess what? You women, you don't have the same rights. Thank you very much. So to me, yeah, that was a big, but you also understand to me that they are still, in a sense, doing, so the first people always talk about Egypt as the first pyramids. Why do you think that? That's not even true. They're not the first pyramids on any of their pyramids. Not their step pyramid, not the other pyramids. So the first step pyramid in the world is in northern Iran. Northern Iran, aren't those the people that I said went from there over into southern Turkey, and then from southern Turkey went down and became Sumerians and Egyptians? Interesting that they have the same thing. Step pyramid, step pyramid. Interesting too is, guess where the oldest pyramid is, period? China. So China has these almost like dolmens, which I think dolmens are all really the same thing. All this to me is all kind of like somewhat connected. Even the beaker culture, putting the alcohol, and it's all really kind of, they're a little like version. This is like saying, in a sense, everybody's Judaism. You just had a version, you became Christian, different kind of Christian, you became Methodist, Buddhist, Buddhist, Baptist, or two different kinds of Unitarian Universals. It's still all in this whole, it's just a bunch of weird branches. I see that as the same thing. The dolmens is just another, in fact, there's dolmens actually in Israel that are not made by Israelis. They're not from the people in the area, or the people in the area had adopted some form of shamanism, paganism that wasn't even part of their thing, which I don't really think so. So they made all these things for, I think it's 3,000 years ago. I think there's I'm more of like a big picture person. That's why thinking about religions and everything about it is like easy for me, but like all the details becomes a little bit harder. I know it, but it's remembering off the top of my head always. But so I want to go on really, so it's really about the rulers and power. So when people talk about that religion is about fear, I agree, the fear of death. If that's what you want to say, I would agree. That's the main fear. Absolutely. The next one is the fear of powerlessness. I think that the desire, the impetus, that when you feel powerless, everyone wants someone to help you. Everybody. We look for anything possible. If I started torturing you right now, you would immediately think of anything you could come up with to make it stop. So in a sense, I think that when we're suffering, right, in the world, real world happens, because if you see that all these religions, by the way, you watch out for the camera.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So when you have all these religions, even though they're really different, it looks like they have a lot of central themes that are the same. And actually, so when people say that they're all connected, yeah, they are kind of connected, but it's not so direct. It's not like you can say this exactly went 100% transfer to this. No, it's like with language. You have the Indo-European religions, a little bit different German, a little bit different France, a little bit different Spain, a little bit different English. Yeah, they're all the same. Some source, but yeah, they're nothing alike in a sense. So that's why I think you need to think about religion. In a sense, they are nothing alike, but yeah, they're all connected. So I think the best thing I try to tell people, for me at least, try to, generalizations is good to use, but just try to remember that that doesn't mean that they fit universally to everything. And this is real important to me because it allows me then to talk to these other religions. I can actually talk to someone who believes in animism and try to get them more to atheism. Because I understand the mindset. I'm not coming with this bigoted thing, oh, you're just primitive and foolish. I think, no, actually, you're just believing the base form of what everyone else believes. That's all. Just like there's some atheists, that is a one fewer God. Well, some of them have no God in a sense, but they still believe in all kinds of magic and ghosts and fairies and whatever. So, the reason I think that's important to talk to those people too is that I care about what's true. So to me, there's three profound things that religion does that it really violates my ethics. And that is that it does pseudoscience. Cannot stand that. They put tons of pseudoscience in religion. To me, I don't like it because then you fool people. If they said it was Dungeons and Dragons and it was all play, great. I think religion would be great. It'd be like a big social club. But it's not. It's more like a terrorist social club. And that it generally produces fanatics. It doesn't mean everyone in religion is fanatics, but certainly this is a toxic substance, product. It's like saying to you that, well, I'm a good Ku Klux Klan member. You have to understand, I'm well-read, I have lots of history on my side, or whatever. Nonsense. So to me, the fact that something, though, can be, doesn't mean it has to be. So my goal is not 100% removing religion. Like, oh, even though that's my goal, no, my goal is for you to actually have a better version of religion that's not as harmful or threatening to me. So if I can help you get more in touch with caring about people like, my friend Jeff talked about at the beginning, about humanism. That's also why, to me, the more we understand these, the less it seems so far away, so bizarre. And then I can actually, because I compassionately want everyone to believe truth. So pseudoscience is the big problem for me. The second problem is pseudo-history. Cannot stand that. Stuff like ancient aliens, nonsense, absolutely ridiculous. I can tell you I've looked at all the archaeology and never saw alien stuff at all. Everything has human fingers all over it. In fact, it's so human, it's like you want to go laugh. Like, wow, 40,000 years ago, they were doing the same thing. 14,000 years ago, they were just like us. That to me is the most profound thing. The clothes they wore, you're like, are you serious? You put 40,000 beads on an outfit for a shaman that you buried in the ground? You know how long those little beads, making them by hand? Oh! I mean, to me, I always think, when you remove the God, then I look at, or the magic, I look at religion, it's still amazing to me, like, wow, the effort that people put into this nonsense. Like I said, to work that hard on these beautiful beads and they just bury it in the ground. I mean, but I also see that it's the humanness. And that he was talking, I want to connect with these are fellow humans, no matter what they believe, no matter what they think. I want to connect with them on a human level. I value them as humans. My goal is not to shame people about religion, it's to educate it so they understand its flaws, so they understand its humanness, so they forever stop thinking that it has some sort of a real quality. It's just a bunch of stories. It's just a bunch of behaviors. These behaviors psychologically are understandable. Most children before 7 are naturally animists. It's not like you have to teach animism. You almost have to unteach it. No magic, no real. You know, you have to, so to me, you have to get the opposite. So when they say, so when people say like, you know, we're born in a sense religious, well, in a sense we're born with the flawed thinking that animism is real. If that's what you mean, then yeah, okay. But that's like saying that, well, we're born to rob banks. There's people that would do that behavior, but you certainly would be wrong to say somehow we're born to do it. So we're born in a sense, like you talked at the beginning about greed. So we're not born in a sense even with that. But to me, everything comes down to, it's just like, I look at all these behaviors, I start to see that there's two, in a sense, main ideas all these are really trying to affect. That humans want safety and comfort. And to me, it's really important to see the difference in these two things. Like, say if you had safety, right? So let's just say that you're locked in this little cell and there's padded rooms, nothing's going to hurt you, nobody can get in forever. That would be a nightmare. Because we are people that are social animals, man. If you put us in a thing with nothing, that even if we have ultimate safety, our minds will go crazy because we like comfort too. So then the same thing with comfort. Let's just say you're a drug dealer. You got all the money you want. You're like burning the stuff, you know? Burying the ground like Pablo Escobar. But you don't have safety. You are constantly worried about dying. That is not living. For I realize for humans to flourish, what all these try to teach in a sense to me is like a form of balance. So I think like you were talking about learning things from the religions, I think I learned that balance may be a good thing for me too as an atheist. Not simply because of religion, but because I see what happens when you don't do balance. I see what happens when you don't have reasoned thinking. It may start, which I think, like in animism, you may start in wonder, but boy, it ends in oppression. And so, sometime in between that, for my own self as an atheist, I want to look at the world and I not want to be bigoted. I don't want to be hateful. I don't want to see just a difference. I want to see where, in a sense, there's a connected, and we're all the same. And that this is a human thing, so I should have sympathy for other people. Like I said, we're almost born with this innate error of thinking, but you know, it's like an optical illusion. We're born with the ability to see optical illusions. Why? Not because our eyes can't see things. It's our mind interpreting what we're seeing. That's the problem. And so to me, that's why you have to be very careful. And I always think that the biggest and most important thing for me is to have a good belief etiquette. That is a way that I approach any and all beliefs. So what I do is I have reasoned belief acquisitions. That means that I really think out what is being offered to me. I don't just accept beliefs. Now, a lot of times people understand we accept a lot of beliefs all the time, almost offhand, because they're not important. Like if I said, there's really a door, even though I don't see it right now, there's a door on the corner. That belief is trivial. So a lot of times we believe this, but it's knowing when you need to be careful. If I told you, well, it's an angel holding that door open, you need to be. For me, I'm not skeptical. I just need to have evidence, justification. And to me, there is no justification. There's no such thing like angels, so I don't have to assume magic around the corner. Now, if you start showing me elements that can prove some form of magic, I am more than open to then have, you know, a belief revision where then okay, well, maybe I need to reassess it. Because if it has justification and valid and reliable, these are also two important things. Something can be, in a sense, valid, like if I aim to go out that door, you know, but I hit the wall, you know, that's not very valid. You know, I'm not getting what I want. So I need to make sure that when I'm assessing things, that I'm getting all the information. That's why I strive so hard to find archaeological data. I look at the genetics. I look at the language. I bought a book for language of archaeology. 1,700 pages. Ridiculous. I'm like, oh, why is it so big? Come on. But anyway, so, you know how hard it is to hold books like that? You're like, this guy should have been volume 1, 2, you know, what the heck? But anyways, not to put down the books, but I did like the book. But I thought it was very interesting to me, because I thought it would be like, you know, no, 10 pages. Like, this is language, went to here, went to here. But it's funny how they really explained a lot of stuff. And to me, like I said, I want to know. So I also, been learning all kinds of stuff that relate to ethnography. The fact that they go, like this one that this woman went to the Bushmen of South Africa and lived with them like 40 years. And she found out there's a difference in how they see fire, which helps me understand they're probably original, because these people live like at about the same way people did 15,000 years ago. So, sometimes. So the fact that they do that means that in a sense they have a type of thinking that we can kind of peer back. I mean, I don't think 100%, but certainly more than looking at Judaism and for looking back. And their behaviors during the day, the way they talk, is different than at night, especially when they're around the fire. And I can just think the original people not knowing what fire is, and a lot of the beliefs about fire in some places of the world have it as almost like a being or an actual god or goddess or whatever. That fire itself is alive, animated, or like an animist. So it really is about what is the motivation for me psychologically. Why do they do this? Why do they want to do this? Because once I understand the why, then I can help other people. See, because if you understand why you're thinking this, then I can say, hey, do you see this? In counseling, which I took, they call it like you mirror people. Because a lot of times you'll say things and you don't even realize you're saying it. And they go, hey, look, you just said this. You said God is real. Could you please explain that, boy? What do you mean by God? I always ask that question to people because I don't even start that I know what you're talking about. I make you justify, because if you say you know God, you should be pretty good at explaining it to me. Not explaining what the Bible verse is. I'm talking about if it's a real thing, it should have real thing properties. And if you can't explain it with real thing properties, you are explaining something to me that is not real. So to me, I like to try to take people's ideas and bring them down to that place and then put them back along, because a lot of people don't realize this stuff happened, and that changes when they understand that, but they understand where their religion is in the place. And you realize that you have like not a second generation religion, but like 15 or 20 or whatever. I mean, it's so regurgitated, it's not even funny. And yet they think that it's somehow some original idea. It's laughable. So I'll go to the last one. And so to me, religion is just dogmatic propaganda. So forget religion's unfounded myths. I have substantiated archaeological facts. The earliest hinting of symbolic or superstitious behaviors began to be seen around 1 million years ago. We noticed this in the way they started cutting the stone tools differently. And they started having a repetitive sort of a behavior, almost like OCD, which I do think there might be some of that in religion in general. Some sort of mental illness behaviors that promote that behavior. So anyways, and then primal superstition increases about 600,000 years ago to a great extent, as I told you, pre-Animism, 300,000 years ago. The earliest superstitions, sacralizing behaviors are about 100,000 years ago with humans, with the clear, behaviors about 75,000 years ago or less, progressing about 50,000 years ago. Finally, about 13,000 years ago, it begins the evolution of organized religion, developing further about 10,000, becoming progressed fully around 7,500 to 5,000, forming the mythologies that we think of today. In all religions and etherealized deities or supernatural elements, they support our superstition, as well as some amount of bundling or grouping, of pseudo-science, pseudo-history, and or pseudo-morality. Therefore, it is, they are, the ones that are denying the truth. And so denying religion and its faithism, no matter how much it's loved in some way, are profound untruths. Or how I see them, are just a connected set of dogmatic propaganda. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Okay.
Well, I wrote down a question here. Do you believe there was any evolutionary advantage to, like, you quoted, like maybe some of the earliest religions, like animism, even shamanism? If there was an evolutionary advantage to these early religions, what that might have been?
Can we answer one at a time? Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's the first, because I don't want to get confused. I don't want to remember all. Just ask the first one, I'll answer it, then we'll go. Let's go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
The first part, at least.
Yeah, was there any advantage
Any advantage? Okay, I wrote down.
Any evolutionary advantage to how religions came about, especially the earlier ones.
Okay, well, I think in general, just like to the fact of the Homo erectus getting stones, I think it all starts in a sense very naturalistic. I think everything was almost to help in a sense. Like we need to make these. They believe we need to make these stone tools a certain way. So they start teaching it as almost like a part of the religion. So to me, when culture and religion, especially at those points, like the same thing. There's no difference. Culture is religion. At that point, they don't make this break like we do, where somehow we have a religious life and a secular life. No, everything was religious life. The whole world was magic. So to me, the evolutionary benefit, I don't know. I think it probably helped us to have memory, in a sense, almost like myths, because they have magical plants. They'll say like that magical plant is for healing. It's a happy plant. So and that happy plant, could be intoxicating. Then you have this negative plant, that has a quality for, say, killing baboons or whatever. They have these different things, and they mythologize them. So in a sense, I think like a song. If I sing a certain song, I can remember the lyrics better than if you try to just tell me those words. This speech right now, none of you are going to remember anything. All you're going to remember is some guy came, talked about stuff you barely cared about, and then you left, and then you moved on. So in a sense, when we learn things like when we're being taught, you guys at the minimum are getting 50% or less. But like someone learning, like me teaching, I get 95% of the learning as I'm teaching. So it's actually the teachers getting the most learning. So I always feel like I'm a student learner because every time I teach this, I'm learning something too.
I'm guessing you might be familiar with Michael Shermer does kind of a breakdown of the cognitive and psychological maybe elements that create religious thinking.
Right.
And there's an assumption that he has, and it seems to be commonplace, that again that it's natural to human cognition through evolution. And I'm just wondering if it might not be that part of early religious thinking might have created a feedback loop that also promoted this kind of, the magical thinking, agency creation, like shorthand heuristics that people use to navigate their world.
Well, it's definitely shorthand they use.
That also feed into religious thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I don't know whether there's an opinion on that, but I think the assumption that it's just part of our evolutionary heritage that we have all these inclinations that make religion natural might not be as true as the fact that, again, they're kind of working in conjunction. And
yes, I don't think that it's one thing. Yeah. So I don't think that religion is one thing. I think that it's actually multiple things. It's always laughed people like a god. Like somehow theism is like floating in the air as some belief all by itself. Yeah, it's a spider. And guess what spiders have to do? They have to be in webs. So to me, that God belief has a web of connected all over the place, and everybody's walking into that web. So I want to remove that web from our life so they can have that in their own life.
That's great.
Go ahead. Question?
What strikes me about the history, it's always kind of amazing to me, but even 600,000 years ago, humans had a kind of a scientific mind.
Yeah.
They observed phenomena and they tried to explain it. And they didn't have the tools we have today. So they kind of went off in the wrong direction.
Yes.
But the whole idea that they were observing and trying to understand their environment
Oh, yes.
and in
That
a
would
way
be an
gain
evolutionary
some
advantage.
Yeah,
control over their
but that would
environment.
only be really towards animism. I would give that. I wouldn't even give it to totemism. I see totemism as starting to control the world, where animism is living in it, in a sense. Mm-hmm. So if I were
At
to
some
say,
point it became domination.
yes, correct. So I think at that point, I don't see that as evolutionary benefit, at least, or as benefit to men maybe eventually. But that dominance was not a productive to me.
But that thread of scientific inquiry has brought
Oh,
us
oh yes, well, because it's all animism from the
to where
beginning.
we
So
are
all of
today.
religion has an element, in a sense, of wonder, or like you said, wanting to, in a sense, understand. That's what I try to go back to. I know that you want the truth. It's a bias. Who wants to openly want lies? No, most people want the truth. So I love that they want that. Even when they're fanatical, great. Tell me what you think, because I know that if you think you have truth, that means you value truth. So if I can get you to understand what the real truth is, we're home free.
And you know, people wouldn't have survived if they didn't understand some real tangible things about the
Hey,
natural
there you go.
environment.
Evolutionary, they would die off.
Yeah, they couldn't just navigate it through what we did, superstition and mysticism. You know, there had to be real things that they actually knew, like about animal behavior
Yeah,
and the way
yes.
the seasons worked and
Yes.
making their place in the world.
Yes.
Had to.
That's
So-
how we became human,
Yeah.
really.
Well, yes. I agree. So
I just want to throw something out there. Just you reminded me of probably most of you know who John Johansson is. He's famous for having discovered Lucy. Paleo anthropologist, and his theory is that one of the ways that human beings evolved into complete humanity was through early creative impulses, and then it's the creative thinking and the things that's that promoted the evolution towards being fully Homo sapiens, and that's as important and significant a thing as any physical development.
well, speaking of physical developments, I know that about 50,000 years ago, well, first off, let me start at the beginning. The thing that makes us different than the Neanderthal and why we in a sense survived and they did not, to me, is one guy talked about is because we're more feminine. It's just that simple. We were feminized. Humans are a feminized version, in a sense, of a Neanderthal. You look at Neanderthal, super stocky, masculine, and more brow and hairier, and in a sense, so I always laugh because when I learned, I was like, wow, we're all women. We started out like that. The default of all humans is an X, is a Y, but the X is female, and everybody has that X. Anyway, so it's really interesting too that, like I said, when you look at how we're different, well, so what we think is that we're different, we survive because we're stronger. It's very interesting that no, we survive because we're more feminine. That blew my mind. But it also changes how I look at what's valuable. Because I don't want to have the value of the world if they're not valuable. As an axiology atheist, that's all I care about is value. It's a value theorist. And a value theorist cares about what is good, what is worthwhile, what is beneficial, you know, what is accurate, what is true, what is helpful, beneficial, good, whatever. So it's all these things. So it really cares about all the morality things, more like virtue ethics, sort of, but in a more of a humanitarian way, not a, because virtue ethics I feel like kind of just says like we should be good, but it doesn't really give a lot of, to me, support of the why, the impetus, the motivation. Because like Stoics can be a lot like an axiological atheist too, but Stoics come from cynicism, where an axiological atheist is more like hopeful and believes in humanity. Like in other words, to an axiological atheist, we believe that humanity is the ultimate form of morality, because all morality is a behavior. It's a behavior construct that then we have social clues or dynamics inside of. To me, there's no such thing as morality if it's only you. It's a social behavior. So when they say, well, without God you can't know morality, I'm like, we all know morality. It's called don't hurt others. I mean, it's not really, and it's a social benefit. It's like, why does it come from? I don't know. We are not alone. That's where it comes from. We have produced this social bonding behavior, just like you know that the more you see someone's face, whether or not you know anything about them, just seeing their face, you trust them more. It's just a bias. It's a bias attached to evolution, and it's to this social bonding. That we, in a sense, we live in caves or groups. We need to start becoming friends, because if not, guess what? Then we don't have safety and comfort.
Just out of curiosity, I'm wondering why you identify under the term axiology or axiologist atheist rather than moral or ethical atheist.
Well, because axiology is in a sense, so think of it this way. So in morality, I'll break you down how I see it. Axiology, in a sense, I'll get to axiology. So the first thing that you have is you have events occur, sensations. After sensations, you have feelings. Once you have feelings, you have thinking about the feelings. Once you have thinking that's right thinking, you have reason. Right reason is logic. Right logic is math. Right math, or high math, would be physics to get us into science. So how do we know things, to me as an axiologist, is a structure of values. And I look at all the pieces and parts. It helps me to identify the worth of things, the goodness of things, the utility of things. Most of the things, even like what science does. We like science because it's useful. It's not just an art. They do just because it's fun. Because it produces some kind of a good colors of the, the solar system. No, it's really doing something useful. So to me, that's what you ask about evolution of religion. I think it did have usefulness, although I think it was more for rulers than it would be useful for the general public.
So I have one you can answer probably really quickly, and it's what I most want to ask somebody like you who's studied where I haven't. And I am very interested in blood sacrifice. I only know of it from Judaism on. Somebody like you who studied way prior to that, have you come up with any, is there any development of this blood sacrifice concept, say 50,000 years ago? I mean, where does this, what have you found? When does this seem to start? Do you know where it started?
I would say possibly shamanism, because shamanism ties cows in trees and hangs them, which could be also the snake and the bull, and the snake is the goddess, so the goddess is the bull. Cattle hawk is famous. There's a book even called The Goddess and the Bull. 9,000 years ago, cattle hawk, by the way.
Is there any positive identity prior to Judaism?
Positive identity. You mean
Yeah,
like
absolute
blood is blood?
archaeological proof or anything?
Well, like I said, that we know that bull cults, JDNA, bull cults, that involve that, which is a whole bunch of religions, by the way. And so bull cults come from southern Turkey, have to do with agriculture, has to do with the phases of the moon, the horn, you know. And they also, women would be like this. Like, you ever seen goddess figures? Yeah, they're being a bull. So, go ahead.
I know, Joseph Campbell speaks to this a little bit in some of his material, and overall I think that Joseph Campbell is kind of an ethnocentric sexist, but at least in this regard he talks about early hunters that they actually, a way to find peace and psychological comfort with the fact that they were taking the lives of things that they considered to be equal to them, the creatures that they hunted, was to see that as a sacrifice on behalf of the benefit of the tribe or the group.
So it was an evolutionary...
But it's a way of potentially thinking about it, and then when human beings shifted entirely towards agriculture almost, and then domestication, that the blood sacrifice idea kind of hung on, even though the economy of life changed, and the relationship to animals then became one of dominance and control over them, and even, you know, hunting for sport, which doesn't seem to have existed prior to that. So at least that's the way Campbell talks about the potential evolution.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I would say that, like I said, the thought of that, so to me it's totemistic thinking when you say sacred, profane. So the blood sacrifice, you're mentioning a sacredized behavior or a superstitionized behavior. So to me, whenever you have ritual, in a sense, ritualistic things are kind of totemistic. But I don't think that they were doing blood sacrifice as totemists. But I do think that that behavior came originally from the idea that there's a sacredness to things, like you said, animals. But so killing them, in fact, they have taboos, right? That's where you get taboos or totemism. So a lot of religions have taboos. A lot of religions are using totemism. But what I'm saying is, so totemism, yes, I agree, might have started the idea of the sacred, and but I think that it's really shamanism that starts hanging things and doing sky burials, and so the blood and all that can be more, I would say. But paganism took that even more and developed it. So I would say really it's in paganism after 12,000. But I do agree with you. It certainly, I think, starts more in shamanism, and its elements can even be traced back to.
So you would say a blood sacrifice type tradition may have started around 10,000 years ago?
Or 12 or something.
Preceding Judaism by maybe 5,000 years?
Yeah.
But Pacific Northwest native totemic cultures would often put a slave or an enemy in the hole where they planted the totem pole as kind of a human blood sacrifice too. So, but I mean, I know everything isn't exactly pure, and it's either this or that.
And also I'm using these terms obviously loosely because I'm trying to give. Because I mean, if I sit here and talk about all the stuff that I know, we'd be here like for a couple days.
No, you did a very good job.
I tried to make it as generic and appealing to everybody as possible. So, but so it's not simple. The answer to me is always like you see it coming from somewhere. Like a little idea builds, evolution, and all of a sudden this big idea. I mean, it's unbelievable how much evolution religion really has. Wow.
So to me, it's de-evolving now.
Well, yeah. Well, I see it as just evolving into another thing. That's what it always does. You know the one thing about truth about religions? It never stays fixed. Give the religion enough time, always change. Always have sex, always. Every single religion. Scientology has sex now. They all do. They all will, because it's profoundly just dogmatic propaganda. It's a bunch of lies. It's this form of science that's not science. It's this form of history, not history. It's a form of belief about the things in the world that's not reality. So to me, it's always going to be this dogmatic propaganda that I need to worry about. It's not true in science, it's not true in history, and it's not true in morality. So to me, it's always, to me, something I should be wary of, personally. Any other questions?
Well, there is one more thing that's on my mind, and that is I am now seeing, I think we're all seeing, I think mostly in advanced societies, we're seeing the erosion of the Abrahamic faiths, at least here in the West. Christianity is closing down at an astonishing rate in the last 20, 50 years. So one could almost predict that the Abrahamic faiths or some of the major religions may disappear within the next few generations. That being said, do you think at that time that everything's going to go atheist, or do you think things are going to go back to the very early shamanistic, where there's still spirituality? Or do you think do you think our future is going to be atheists in science, or do you think it's going to go back to a more unknown, simple religion?
So to me, superstition can exist without atheism. Superstition can exist with atheism. So supernaturalism can exist without a God, the same way, or with a God. It makes so. I mean, do I think God belief is going to be as strong as it is? No, I do think that there is going to be a real change, because I think that inherently people are sort of animistic, or almost they like little control behaviors, so kind of totemistic, and shamanistic in the fact that they think they can kind of do things and behaviors and music and stuff that makes us feel these phenomenological experiences, and then they assume these, whatever they call them, spiritual experiences. I just call them phenomenological experiences, experiences of you know, profound, you know, feelings inside your own mind. But I mean, it's great. I see wonder. I always laugh when people say, atheists don't see wonder. Are you kidding me? I see more wonder now. I used to look at an amazing sunset and go, yeah, big deal, God can do anything. I mean, if God can do anything, what is special? Nothing is surprising. Or like, oh, there's a flying unicorn. I'm like, yep, God can do anything.
That was one of my earliest observations that started to get me to question Christianity, is I would see that wonder in various forms, or the kumbaya spiritual experience, but I would see other religions having it too. And yet my parents would say, no, that's just our religion that has that benefit. And then I would also see, you know, Russians or, you know, people presumably atheists having a similar experience. And I think, well, this isn't making sense to me. It has nothing to do with my religion.
It doesn't. Any other questions? Well, I really appreciate your time, so I guess we can call it over then. Thank you.
I do have a question. I didn't know if it was